Hello everyone, today's notes are on quadratic models. Now in the last chapter, one of your days of notes were on linear models, graphing data, looking for the line of best fit. Now we're looking for quadratic models, meaning perhaps this data doesn't follow a line very well, perhaps it follows a parabola. So here's your first example. Three things we need to do. First of all, decide whether the set of data could best be modeled by a linear model or a quadratic model. What that means is graph your data. Does it look like it follows a line or does it look like it follows a parabola? Part B, find the model that best fits. So based on your answer to A, we need to find the equation of either the best fitting line or best fitting parabola. And part C, use the model to predict what y is equal to and x is 2. So when we look at this data here, we've got our x values here on the left, our y values on the right. Let's let our calculator do a lot of our work for us. So I'm going to just push this data aside, grab my calculator, there it is. And remember, to do this, we press our stat key to enter our data, and then enter. Now if you have data in list 1 and list 2, you can clear it by pressing the up arrow, the clear key, and then the down arrow. Now I've already got my data entered in list 1 and list 2. Once your data is entered, you might want to pause your video, enter that data quickly, then unpause. But once it's entered, we press our stat key once again, go over to calculate. Now in the last unit, we used choice number 4, linear regression. Oh, I'm ahead of myself. What I want to do first, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to that data. So I'm just going to press my stat key, look at my data. First thing I want to do is graph the data to see, should I do linear regression or quadratic regression? So I'm going to go up to my stat plot menu. Second, stat plots. Turn your plot on. We want to look at list 1 and list 2. Once we have our plots set up, if we press our zoom key, the 9th option will zoom in on our statistics. So right there is the graph of our data. And we want to decide, does this follow a linear pattern or a quadratic pattern? Well, to me, it looks more like a quadratic pattern, meaning we've got some kind of curve. Looks like some kind of parabola could fit this data. So now back to the calculator. So instead of, well, let's press our stat key again. Let's go over to calculate. In the last unit, we used linear regression. Now we want to use that 5th choice, quadratic regression. Our data is in list 1, comma, list 2. And remember, we don't need to type that in unless our data is in some other lists. And when we press enter, it gives us the equation of the best fitting parabola through our data. So I'm going to bring that onto the home screen. And then I'm going to write here, our equation of our parabola now would be y equals 1.3x squared minus 1.5x plus 1.6. So there's the equation of the best fitting parabola through our data. Okay, last thing we need to do is use this model, use this equation to predict what is y equal to when x equals 2. That means we're going to plug 2 in place of x here and here. So we're going to say 1.3 times 2 squared, and do the square first, minus 1.5 times 2 plus 1.6. And if you do that, you'll get a y value of, you won't get an exact value, but y is going to be about 3.8. Which if you look at your data, when x equals 2, it seems to fit, seems to make sense that y could be about 3.8. Okay, let's try one more of these, and this will wrap up our notes. So same exact directions, here's some data. We need to decide, should we use a linear model or a quadratic model? So the first thing we need to do again is put this data into 2 lists on our calculator. So I'm going to press my stat key. I'm going to press enter to edit our list. And I did this in advance, so I've got my data in list 1 and list 2. Once it's in list 1 and list 2, we want to graph our data to see, does it follow a linear pattern or a quadratic pattern? Does it look like a line or does it look like a parabola? So I'm going to press second stat plot again. I've already got this turned on. So now if I just zoom in on my statistics, I can see my data. Now, it's not a perfect parabola, but I think a parabola would fit this much better than a line would. So you can see a parabola shape maybe looking something like this. So I think this is a quadratic model. So that means we want the equation of the best fitting parabola through this data. So on your calculator again, press your stat key, go over to calc. The fifth choice is quadratic regression, and we can say our data is in list 1, comma list 2. And again, I don't even need to type that because if you leave that part blank, list 1 and list 2 are the defaults. And there's the equation of your parabola, which I can write as y equals negative point, I'll just round to the nearest hundredth here, 0.56 x squared plus 17.38 x minus 9.43. Okay, so now we need to plug 21 in place of x. So I can say negative 0.56 times 21 squared plus 17.38 times 21 minus this. That'll give you a y value. Now, depending on how you rounded this, you might get a y value around 91. So I should say y is about 91. You might get a y value about 109. So it's going to be somewhere around 100. So I'm going to say when x is 21, y is going to be somewhere around 100, which seems to fit the data. And again, if you got something a little different from what I got, it's probably because we rounded a little differently. So however we rounded these coefficients here will really impact how that answer looks. Okay, so we need to practice some of this on page 169. Practice finding quadratic regressions with some data you have there, and then using those regression equations to make a prediction. All right, see what you can do on this homework on page 169.